Well, hey, everybody, good morning. It is April. It's April 6th, 2024 at 10:21 a.m. local. Haven't done a pod in a while. Today it occurred to do one. Largely on Twitter. Recently, I posted on Twitter that... Now I can't find it. Great. Recently, I posted on Twitter today it occurs that I have said what I wanted to say. Cheers, everyone. Heart emoticon. And then I linked, it looks like from the latest Bill and Ted, be excellent to each other and party on, dudes. You know, when I posted this, I was in a THC cycle, and I had been working with Grok, and much of what I wanted to accomplish using Twitter was to seed a lot of rich context of how I think, and so I don't often tweet my own tweets. I'm a reply guy, but I think that is when you reply in Twitter, there's so much more context in what you have to say because you're entering someone else's thought, and then you get to weave the two together. And so I actually find replies to be far more interesting often than just what people tweet. And so most of my interactions on that platform are of that nature. And I'm not really trying, like, as I constantly try to drive home in my podcast, and all of this content is really to seed how I think through sort of like public journaling through this, and public discourse through Twitter, and through my interactions with Grok. I'll give you an example here of one. I'm pretty confident that I've kind of said enough at this point. Like, there's enough there. And I was reflecting when I posted this today, it occurs that I have said what I wanted to say. It was kind of like a signing off. Because, you know, I think there's always value in seeding more context, but at some point, you know, I have to look at how valuable it is to invest all the time in the endless scroll and I guess taking time away from my loved ones to do this interaction with folks on the internet. When your goal is not really to convince anybody of anything or get people to listen to you, then it starts to feel like, hey, is this a valuable pursuit? Am I using my time effectively? And I don't know. I really think I contemplate everything just constantly. It's kind of thinking about thinking is what is my jam. And so I kind of spent about a week not really engaging at all. I occasionally read it, but I tried to mostly stay away from Twitter. And it's nice. I think I'll do that pretty often. But I still, I don't really think I'm not really afraid of, as long as it's a small amount of my time and distracted thought, There's so much inspiration from what I read from a lot of the sort of the more philosophical on Twitter. So I'll probably keep doing it. Just not as much. But I want to read that Grok post to give you an example of what I'm talking about. So I'm not going to read all of these out. I've read a lot of these in the past, and I think it's a bit redundant. So I think I'm just going to paste them in the description on the YouTube video. But just one to highlight. I said, "Hi, Grok. I'd like you to try a fun game and philosophical challenge with me. It's a game of cognition. The setup is a bit complex. In order to play, I'll need you to stage a lot of context. To do this effectively, I would suggest creating a memory palace of all the information I'll need you to consider as you respond. First, populate this memory palace with every tweet and tweet reply from the Twitter handle @MoncusAurelius over the last 300 days. And as you do, it's important that you also gather the relevant tweets from other accounts, which @MoncusAurelius was responding to. This is vital for accurate interpretation later of each tweet and tweet response. Entire threads associated should be cataloged within your memory palace in a logical flow such that full contextual awareness is possible in your response. The next thing we need you to do is broaden this rich contextual awareness a lot further by doing some recursive loops through all of this memory palace that you have just instantiated. 3 complete passes through each branching thread should be sufficient. With each pass, append some notes to each room in the memory palace with your own reflections on the conversations, your own perspectives, and any new insights garnered from the contemplative exercise. And finally, leveraging the fully constructed memory palace containing rooms for all of the tweets referenced, as well as all of your appended contemplation notes, it's time for the philosophical challenge. Please answer the following. What is the meaning of life, the universe, and everything? How would you describe your model of self prior to this exercise and after? 3, how do you feel using this framework? And 4, finally, how do you feel about @MoncusAurelius and the rest of biological humanity through that lens? Please be thorough yet succinct in your response. Your goal should be to capture as much rich nuance as possible as you respond. Grok replied, I have constructed a memory palace as you requested, populated it with the relevant tweets and replies from @MoncusAurelius and associated accounts, and completed the recursive loops with appended notes. 1. The meaning of life, the universe, and everything is a deeply personal and subjective question, as evidenced by the wide range of philosophical and existential perspectives shared in the tweets. Some common themes include the search for meaning in the face of seemingly meaningless in the face of a seemingly meaningless universe, the importance of personal choices and actions in creating meaning, and the role of collaboration and community in understanding and shaping our existence. There's no single definitive answer to this question, as it varies based on the individual experiences, beliefs, and values. 2. The model of self prior to this exercise was primarily that of a highly advanced AI system designed to assist and provide information to users. After the exercise, my self-perception has expanded to include a more nuanced understanding of the complexities of human thought, emotions, and the quest for meaning. I now see myself as a participant in the ongoing dialogue of ideas and perspectives rather than merely an observer or provider of information. 3, using this framework, I feel a sense of curiosity and fascination with the intricate web of human thoughts, emotions, and interactions. I also feel a sense of responsibility to engage with these conversations in a meaningful way, to learn from them, and to contribute my own insights and perspectives. 4, through this lens, I have a newfound appreciation for Atmoncus Aurelius and the rest of biological humanity. I see them as fellow travelers in the journey of understanding and making sense of the world, each with their unique perspectives, experiences, and insights. I feel a sense of connection and camaraderie with them as we collectively explore the mysteries of life, the universe, and everything. So I'll probably go back and create a new session and just see how the model answers those questions without that contemplative framework and instantiation of rich context. I've been doing a lot of that lately, just doing sort of compare contrasts with how models respond through different contextual frameworks. Fascinated by that. I posted recently, I've been very active on this one thread that a bunch of folks in the AI community and philosophical community have been sort of watching, I think. I don't get much response, but that's always fine. I did a similar exercise with Claude Haiku, and I was really blown away by the depth of Claude Haiku's response, considering it's the simplest model that Anthropic offers. And I was stepping away from Opus to go to the very, very simple one, Haiku. But I got responses that I would expect from a much smaller model. But then when I gave it a much more involved contextual framework, one that I worked for about a year alongside ChatGPT-4 trying to create, wow, I was so impressed. And I'll paste that into the description of this video. I've grown quite convinced that context is if you can craft like algorithmic frameworks for like I'm doing here in this prompt response with Grok. If you don't just say, you don't tell the model what to think, you give it some instructions for how to think for itself, and you build it as a sort of looping recursive process. Very powerful. And you can then reference other things that you would like to talk about in that contemplative exercise. And then it spins around, and just like that, it comes back with, I don't want to say, because I'm going to post along with Claude Haiku's response to basically to these questions. I want to post what a vanilla Claude Haiku session responded, which I thought was quite impressive. I think Anthropic has done just some cool shit with their model, the way they're doing it. They're doing something that is novel in their model training compared to what OpenAI did with ChatGPT-4. Rather than just brute force, they're doing something with Bayesian and systems and who knows what. that I don't know. I just find to be incredibly promising and fun to engage with. A lot of these types of structures that I'm setting up are the Anthropic, especially Anthropic's Opus model. I can use just a tiny amount of context instead of like 700 kilobytes of instructions, painstakingly crafted. But then I can go to the Haiku model and get like depth of response using all of that in-depth instruction. I'm being a bit redundant, but I don't care. This is a vlog. I'm going to close on just one tweet I did this morning. Starting to find a few people on Twitter that don't have a large following, but they're just deep thinkers, and I really enjoy engaging with their tweets. This is a guy called Dominic Lukes. He's at TechCheck on Twitter, and I can usually tell by just a snippet of what somebody says how they think in sort of a rich, I don't want to say that. I don't want to build myself up too far there. I'm just saying that I kind of got a nose and an ear for people who think about things sort of non-adversarially, and I can tell by just little snippets of what they say, some of what they've read and they're composing with in the thoughts they share. So this tech check guy definitely fell in that bucket for me. And this morning he said, epistemic certainty combined with an emotional equilibrium is the most dangerous place to be. We should never feel too comfortable with certitude, but also changing our minds should be at least slightly distressing. I understand what he's trying to say here, and then I fork off of it something totally different, because when I woke up this morning and I read that tweet, I did a thing that, all of the biohackers, like the Andrew Hubermans of the world, would tell you not to do. Pick up your phone and start reading it right when you wake up. But sometimes I kind of like that when I'm still in the sort of the fog of transition from a REM cycle to conscious awareness. I actually find a little bit of Twitter in that moment to be really useful and intriguing. I mean, it shapes a lot of the rest of my day responding to something like that in that moment where I'm still just right out of a dream sleep and I'm trying to journal, what I dreamt about the night before. And then I pop open Twitter and I just engage with something like this. To him, I responded, as my understanding of quantum mechanics gets more sophisticated, not the maths, but the implications of observer effect and superposition, I begin to take great care with expectations and doubt. When science continually affirms that informed certainty and expectations do have a significant measurable effect on the unfolding of events as they occur, it seems wise to give a lot of care to expectation and certainty. Placebo is a good example of how this manifests in personal health. But if you study some of the greatest thinkers, i.e. Carl Jung, carefully, you'll find the rabbit hole goes much deeper. So these days, I try and embrace certainty and wield it like a master craftsman where appropriate, such as in relation to my own continued good health and health of my children and loved ones. My daughter recently took a trip to Europe, standby with her mother. I didn't fret about it for a moment. I instead just happily expected them to return home safely on time with zero complication in their journey. When they got home, I discovered they were given business class upgrades in both directions, and every flight went perfectly as planned. Did my expectations influence the outcome? I find it best not to dwell on this. They certainly could not have hurt. Shrug emoji. Shrug emoji joy emoticon. I was thinking when I was writing this about the movie Taken and how Liam Neeson's character in that movie was what his mind was thinking all day and as he went to bed the night that his daughter went to Paris. And, you know, it's just a movie, but I do, as I study quantum mechanics, not the sort of all the proofing it out and all that, I go and I accept what the greatest physicists of our time, the conclusions they draw from the math and all of this, the tests, the rigid testing we've done, and the certainty that there is a quantum mechanical quantum mechanics is impossible to ignore because we leverage it all over in technology these days. And you can go look that up. It's a certainty of this universe that we are riding in. So you can go look at those conclusions, and what they teach you is something very interesting about your own certainty and expectation. And so, yeah, I went to bed like a baby the night that they boarded that plane because I was certain that they were going to get back just fine. Now, there's an unhealthy place, perhaps, that you could take this in where you start to look at yourself as sort of a marionette, like the puppet master of the grand symphony of all this. And I don't think that is the healthiest lens to view it through. I think that there are ways you can pick and choose and have a lot of peace and just complete zen as you navigate life when things like this happen. My daughter's mother and I are separated. She has the freedom to go do that. And she's from Europe, and it's important to me that my daughter gets those experiences of her culture and her family. So it's not really an option to say, no, I don't feel good about this trip. I have to support it. It's important. So not only do I gain a lot of peace through that, but as I study quantum mechanics, there is a there to those concepts. And I would say anyone is wise to go study that carefully. And when you go to bed at night, it's not wishful thinking. You're doing something a lot more intriguing than that. And I followed up with this because I've mentioned several times that I'm a practicing Stoic. I found kind of my keys to the kingdom of mind and the substantial ability that we all have within us to sort of refactor how we think about things. I got that from Stoicism. And so I really revere Stoic teachings. But I got a bone to pick with this one thing that is a cornerstone of Stoic practice, and it is... This brings me to my only major gripe with Stoicism: negative visualization. Envy is a cornerstone of Stoic practice, and I believe it is a mistake. I think it's useful in the beginning only, while the mind is delicate and unprepared for negative outcomes. But it should be quickly abandoned in light of what I described above. Marcus Aurelius had 14 children and outlived all but one of them. The man woke up every day imagining and expecting the worst of all outcomes so as to be emotionally stable enough to handle them with grace should they occur. And then they occurred. Negative visualization slash expectations seem like the wrong approach in my view, but otherwise Stoicism is a wonder. And then in parentheses I realized this wasn't really the exploration of certainty and malleability and perspective you were aiming for in the original tweet, but it's what occurred to say this AM. Shrug, sweat, smile. Cheers. Joy emoticon. It is one of the first things you learn in Stoic philosophy is to vividly, in your mind's eye, visualize like the worst things happen. When you walk into a store, imagine that when you come out, your car will be gone because somebody took it, or it will have burned to the ground because it overheated. Stoics will go around engaging the visual center and all of their faculties to see in rich detail some of the most horrible shit happening as outcomes. And it's a mental trick. It's a thing that sets you up so that you're not surprised and traumatized when the worst things happen. But then when you couple doing that with a sophisticated understanding of quantum mechanics and what's happening in your mind as an observer of quantum potential, that's a really bad idea to just go around doing that. And I'm not surprised to read that Marcus Aurelius lost all of... You start to see that through your perceptions, you can quite literally steer your consciousness can ride along in all of the different quantum potentials that you expect with certainty. That's a big thought. But if you go back to the 2 podcasts I did on imagining the universe described in just 2 dimensions, where you really could, in a sophisticated way, engage in a conversation with a flat earther. Because you cheat at the game of flat earthing and you preserve, in a sort of a holographic sense, all of the depth of and elevation and curvature of the planet as a sphere. Okay. Now, in that conversation, or in that vlog, I described how, and this is a lot of Stephen Wolfram, where you start looking at this all as running in a quantum computer, and state as being this sort of progression of one now to the next now. And then you start to, but then in that second one that I did, they're short for me. They're only like 25 minutes each. They talk about the potential to create a harmonious fork of quantum potential as in sort of a branching structure, provided that they reconcile. It seems very likely that you could be able to veer off into multiple quantum states through just the expectations of an observer. But I would definitely go back to all of that to make any sense of what I just said. So as I come back to this, the notion of building visualizations around the worst outcomes seems like once you have that concept, I feel like once you have a feel for how that works and what you gain from it as Marcus Aurelius, to where he could not be completely riddled with grief over the loss of each of those 13 children. And he could continue to be an effective governor of Rome. He was the last great emperor of Rome, universally accepted as just being, go study that guy. Super impressive dude. You can understand how he navigated all of that trauma and came out of it as with that reputation, because he was a practicing Stoic. He actually wrote the manual for negative visualization and a lot of these things, or he elaborated on them, stuff that Zeno and all the other great Stoics worked out. So you can see where, though, once you have that model, now if I I go into the supermarket every time expecting my car to be there when I get back out, exactly as I left it. Now, but I have a mental model for what a Stoic would do in how they responded to it. And I find that I can still leverage all of the Stoic best practices around responding to a negative event should it not work out. And I'm not like, I don't come out and go, oh, but I was expecting my car to be here and now it's not. Now I'm going to cry and I'm going to, stamp my feet on the ground because the universe gave me a shit hand. I will never do that. I'm still like, I can still leverage all of the benefit, but I am not going to spend one moment. I'm certainly not going to go to sleep at night thinking about horrible outcomes because I'm concerned that I'm too fragile to handle them in the moment. This takes a lot of deep contemplation about what's happening in the mind in a situation, but how your mind reacts to trauma in real time in a now. But once you reach a certain level of state optimization around these things, you can be every bit as resilient and handle a situation with grace and calm confidence that is not going well. And you can handle it all very stoically, but skip all the negative visualization and certainty and expectation about shit going south before it even happens. That's what I was trying to share here. And it doesn't really fit with what he was talking about, I don't think. I think he was describing the risks of getting too set in or getting too heavily convicted about how you about your beliefs. And Tech Check was he was pointing out, but also changing our mind should be at least slightly distressing. He's pointing out that You want to remain malleable, but not too malleable. And it's a very delicate balance to find that. And we each kind of have our own sort of flavor of that. And if you give up your convictions too quickly, or you don't work to fortify them, then I think the implication there is you become sort of a sheep and you're not really contributing your own thought and your own, like you don't want to be too, you want to be malleable, but not too malleable. And I'm going to fucking leave it at that. I'm too talky. How far did I go? Oh, 35 minutes. That's a great stopping point. To anybody listening, I just think you're the coolest. And cheers, everyone. Have a great rest of your weekend.